our business meeting.
I apologize for interrupting. Are you guys able to hear him?
I can hear you. I
Okay,
can't hear
Reverend Lent, no one can hear you.
We can't hear him.
He was going in and out before. He may have some insecurity in
He's
his.
muted right now.
No, he wasn't.
He is. He is.
He's also not talking.
Reverend Lent, you might want to repeat your message because we didn't get your audio.
All right, I am having difficulty with my internet, such as the day we're in here. I am actually going to turn off my video so that you can hear me. I want to welcome everybody to our annual meeting. And I'm going to turn it over to John now before I get cut off again for our opening prayer.
John, you are muted.
Hello, greetings everybody. Peace be upon you. Shalom, salam alaikum, and paz para todos. Que Dios te bendiga. This is a little prayer adapted from the ancient Gaelic and Celtic runes, and it's called Deep Peace to You. Deep peace of the running wave to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the infinite peace to you. Welcome all.
Again, I would like to welcome you all again and welcome the faith communities which you represent. At a live meeting, we would normally have you stand up, introduce yourself, and talk about and welcome your faith community as well. We're going to forego that because of the limitations of this Zoom meeting here tonight. But just really important to remember that we represent a large group of faith organizations here in the Hudson Valley. And you know, you are a conduit, that you are at this meeting, you are a conduit for the work of the council into those faith communities. So thank you for your representation and thank you for your presence here tonight. It has some information about our guest speaker. It has minutes. One of the things it really has that's neat, it has some budget information. If you like the numbers, they're there. But it also has a way in the back for you to get more involved for how you stay connected to Dutchess Interfaith Council. So that sheet, I want you to pull out of the packet and put up on your fridge or put up on your desk or wherever it is that you're going to remember it. That being said, we're going to move on to our business meeting. So you have for you minutes from our 2020 annual meeting. It is the last meeting many of us had as a group of people from the larger community together. We were all spaced out at St. John's, and it feels like a very, very long time ago, a year ago, but what a year it's been. So I move those minutes be accepted. Are there any comments, concerns, or corrections?
If, this is Teresa. If my name can just
I'm-
be corrected in the spelling of the last name, that is Giovanniello, on the agenda topic elections, Giovanniello. Thank you.
All right, we are amending to just correct a spelling. We're very sorry about that, Teresa. All right. One that is speaking anything wrong about these minutes, or that they shouldn't be approved, or that there's a problem with them, Robert's rules allows us to pass them by saying, the moderator asking the secretary to cast one vote to approve the minutes. And that saves us a lot of aggravation here tonight. So that's what I would ask Muriel, our secretary, to do. And we'll call those minutes approved.
Okay, so I move that the minutes be
All right.
approved.
I move that they be approved. I asked you to cast one vote to approve them since there was no dissension.
Okay, so done.
Oh, thank you, Muriel. At this point, I'm introducing to some of you, but many of you have met John before. We have a new executive director this year. We are thrilled that even during this pandemic year, we were able to do a search and hire a talented, gifted executive director to lead our organization. And so I would like you all to welcome and to hear the words now of John Mckenna. John, welcome, and it's your time to speak.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Reverend Paul, and greetings to everybody. I look forward to the day when I can spend face-to-face time in your communities, at your various congregations, and get to know all of you across this amazing county. Had the privilege of being officially offered the opportunity to serve early last fall. So, a good 6 months in, and it's been all virtual introductions, including tonight, but we will get there. The effort is all about elevating our interfaith voice and elevating our interfaith spirit. And we believe, as you're going to witness later this evening with the program, that it's just an imperative that in all the challenges that we have, that the interfaith voice be at the table. And so I am just privileged to work with you to make sure that our programs remain vibrant and strong, and that we build out new programming because the communities are calling for it. So we are embarking on our 49th year now. And so this is a wonderful time to get re-engaged, or for the new people out there to jump on board, because we will be celebrating our 50th anniversary as an organization. It was in May of 1972 that this incredible effort was launched in Poughkeepsie. And here we are 50 years later, 50 years stronger, with 60 plus congregations representing all the major faith traditions across this diverse and wonderful county. So please jump in now. I do want to make some emphasis that a very important project that has grown just recently is this vaccination coalition coming out of Dutchess County, and how we are playing a pivotal role in getting information to all the congregations about what it means to get your members vaccinated. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be posting information on our website, and we'll be getting it out to the congregations too. These will be templates of messaging that you can bring to your congregations and inspire and influence people throughout the county to meet this challenge. We have a Dutchess County challenge to get all of our all of our residents vaccinated as soon as possible so we could return to the place we all want to return to. I would also encourage everybody to please get a hold of us by emailing office@DuchessCountyInterfaith.org. That's office@DuchessCountyInterfaith.org, because we want you to receive the wonderful newsletter that our team produces usually twice a month. And it just has a plethora of information that you will find valuable, and your respective congregations can funnel us some information that's newsworthy to your organization, and we're happy to post as well. So yes, please get involved with the newsletter. The various programs that you can continue to learn about and get involved in and benefit from. We have our ongoing energy programs, the Nexamp and Petro partnerships we have, which create incredible savings to our member organizations. Please stay engaged with these programs. We have Story Circle, and in the fall, we'll be having our annual crop walk work and our Interfaith Music Festival and Thanksgiving celebration. And of course, the launch of this new Peace and Reconciliation Initiative, which you're going to be able to witness in about 20 minutes. So all on board. Look forward to getting to know you all. Please feel like this is definitely a two-way. We need your collective voice. We welcome your collective voice, and we will address the challenges in front of us with the spirit that only comes when we join together, hand in hand, heart in heart, spirit in spirit. I do want to just make some direct reference of gratitude to Reverend Paul Lent for his many years of service in helping preside and lead us and guide us. I know he's going to stay very much engaged, but thank you, Paul, for your service. And I also want to personally thank Susan Carnes-Hecht and the Vassar Temple host for doing all the behind the scenes work that allows us to do this virtual event tonight. So all love and all gratitude to you. And let's have a wonderful evening tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I've moved to my phone and I think it's going to work better.
Okay.
So the president's remarks. I have had the privilege of being the president of the Dutchess County Interfaith Council for just 2 years. My last 2 years of a 6-year service term on the board. And I am delighted that the organization continues to grow and to sort of grow into some potential that we have. You know, interfaith, religious communities around the world are not often seen as bringing people together in common cause. Often they're seen as divisive. Here in the Hudson Valley in Dutchess County, we are so privileged to have an organization almost 50 years now, the Dutchess Interfaith Council. And we've accomplished much, but there's so much more we can do together in the voice of interfaith work, really for the improvement of our communities. And I just want to say that really for me, the bottom line of the Interfaith Council is that we need to continue to work on building relationship with each other, because when the difficult time comes, you have a friend in a differing faith community that is going to be there to support you, to uplift you, your community, our community, and we move forward together. And the Interfaith Council has the ability to do some things that none of our congregations, none of our faith communities can do on their own. And so, yes, I will stay connected, I will stay involved, and I encourage all of you to find new ways that you can get involved, but more than that, how you can bring more people in your community of faith into the life of this organization. And with that, a great segue into one of the ways that we need you and your community to be involved in the life of this organization is financial support. If you don't know if or how much your community of faith donated to Dutchess Interfaith Council last year, I'm going to ask you, how about you find that out? How about you have a discussion about whether that is the right number? Because we are a supported organization. We need the support of communities of faith and individuals of good faith and fundraising ventures to do what we do as an organization and to think about expanding. And with that, I turn it over to Jean, our treasurer, to give us the treasurer's report.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's good to see so many people here, even if it's on a small screen. Let's see. Susan, you don't have, John, are you a co-host by any chance to put it up? No. Okay.
You didn't.
They all
you didn't
have
provide
it, though.
that to me. I
They
can.
all have it. Okay.
They all have it in the program.
Okay. So what I want to do is to, as a part of the program, you have the document that will show, that shows our year 2020 actual and the 2021 budget. And to briefly summarize the situation, the year 2020, of course, is an unusual year in so many instances, and DCIC, it was no exception. It was an unusual year. We were without an executive director for half of the year. And of course, we were not able to do as much in the way of activities. And so we ended up the year with a deficit of almost 70, mainly because we were really not able to do any fundraising last year. Our budget is really composed, you know, the different components of our revenue is our donations. We do have this energy program that brings us some money, but we do need fundraising in order to balance our budget. And we have been fortunate in prior years to have done some pretty good fundraising through our gala, and that has helped us to accumulate some reserves that were enabled us to fund this deficit. The 2021 budget reflects a break even, but it's only a break even if we can do our fundraising like we have done in the past. So it's going to be incumbent upon the various members of our community to step forward and to continue, as Reverend Paul says, to support the organization. We really do some wonderful programming, and we have some wonderful exposure out into the community, and we really need, you know, the support to continue that. And that is my report.
So I'm going to ask that if you have a specific question, that Jean could answer that at a later time. Thank you, Jean, for your report. Thank you for your work. We are blessed that you stepped in as our treasurer this year. So thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I would ask the nominating committee. Lorraine, will you present the slate of officers nominated for our board positions?
You want officers or the slate of
No,
candidates?
I want the board positions. I'm sorry, just the
Okay.
board.
We have the following: Taylor Holbrook, AJ Stack, Deirdre Jen Brown, Jean Fleischman, and Balaji Kiran Gila, otherwise BJ, for 3 years, and Gabriela Vega Matthews for 1 year.
All right, you've heard the nominating committee's report for board members. Are there any nominations from the floor? Hearing none, is there anyone to speak against any of these nominations? Hearing none, I would ask the secretary to cast one vote to approve the slate of board members that the nominating committee brought forth. Thank you. Now, if we could have the officer slate.
The officers' slate is as follows. For president, Teresa Giovanniello, 1 year. For vice president, myself, Lorraine Harton-Gilardi, for 1 year. For treasurer, Jean Fleischman, for 1 year. And for secretary, Muriel Horowitz, for 1 year.
And just so everyone understands, our bylaws require an annual election of officers. So it's not like we could give them 2 or 3 years. That's what the bylaws mandate. So having heard that slate of officers, is there anyone to speak against or to make a substitute motion?
Oh, golly.
Hearing none, I would ask the secretary to pass one vote to approve the slate of officers.
So done.
Thank you. And now, Teresa, would you present the nominating committee for the year 2021 into 2022, next year's nominating committee?
The nominating committee is Gail Berger, Taylor Holbrook, and Teresa Giovanniello.
Are there any one to speak against or to substitute for the nominating committee? Hearing none, I would ask to cast one vote and to elect the nominating committee as presented. And I would like to thank, certainly thank all of those officers, nominating committee, and our board members, those people who have agreed to serve. We are a volunteer-run organization, and thank you for agreeing to serve. I hope you'll all have the opportunity to thank them in person when you're next in contact with these officers and these leaders of our organization. I too would like to thank our outgoing officers, our board members, Kazum Gupta, who's been on for many years, Marianne Bashan, and Carol Whitman. We've been blessed by their service, and we thank them, and we welcome our new officers. And my last word of thanks is really to all of you for helping us to make that go so very, very smoothly. So thank you. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting that we might move into our program piece. Someone want to make that motion?
I do, Gene Fleischman.
All right. So all those in favor, I want you to just give some sort of affirmation out of your tradition. If it's amen, great. If it's something else, that's just fine too. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
And amen.
And that concludes our business meeting.
So we are echoing a few minutes before 6. Shall we take a break for 4 minutes, or do we believe that everyone's on who needs to be on for our program?
I think I'm waiting for Annie Ladron. She said she's trying to get on, so maybe if you can wait a couple minutes.
Okay, so we'll give 4 minutes until our actual start time, and we'll hopefully be able to start on time.
Okay.
Thank you, Ani.
Teresa, we're also waiting for Nora.
Nora's on.
Nora's on, okay.
Nora's on.
I'm here. Hi.
There.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, it's just Ani Ladron.
To
Yes,
read,
let's wait till 6 because that's when we said this program would begin, and you never know.
So Teresa, I would suggest Teresa introduce herself to everyone.
Sure. So as you all know, if you were in on the beginning of the meeting, I'm the incoming president. My name's Teresa Giovanniello, and I have been a parishioner of St. Martin de Porres Church. I've been involved with the Dutchess County Interfaith Council for over 2 decades now, and I'm thrilled to be here. In case anyone is curious what I do during the day, I'm a deputy commissioner at the Department of Community and Family Services in Dutchess County, and I've been here for 15 years. So thank you for that, Muriel. We have 2 more minutes to go. Grab a cup of tea or coffee.
We also do want to make sure that everyone knows that we are recording the meeting. We should make that known.
All right, I think Ani Ladron is here.
Okay.
While we're waiting, I just want to say that this week is we are having a story circle on Thursday. So if you would like to join, it's not too late. You can register on the website or on the Good News letter. And if you don't get the Good News letter that comes out pretty much bi-weekly, I believe, go on to the website and register to get it.
Shall I blow the conch?
Give us 1 more minute, Ani Ladron.
Okay.
Then, and all of the participants are here and they all know when to start.
So I just would like to, Ms. Jean here, I just wanted to interject for a minute. I noticed in going through the chat that Sabah Ali has sent a message for everyone. He's a reporter with the Poughkeepsie Journal and working on a story about race and religion. And he says, if I do use anything from this event, I will try to reach out to you beforehand.
She.
Thank you, Jean.
She's a wonderful reporter. It's 6 o'clock. Shall we start?
All right, thank you.
All right, everybody knows what to do, and I'm going to mute myself. Ani
Good
Ladron,
evening.
take it away.
As incoming president of the Dutchess County Interfaith Council Board, it is my honor to welcome you to our special program for tonight. On May 2nd, 1972, 54 representatives from area congregations walked through the doorway of Holy Trinity Roman Catholic Church in Poughkeepsie under a banner that read, "Love has brought us together." So began the Dutchess County Interfaith Council. The work of the council from then until now has been to try and live out that message and to affirm that our common humanity as God's children is deeper than our divisions. Tonight, we begin a year-long initiative, Engaging Differences, a journey towards understanding. This initiative aims to explore the things that pull us apart and find ways to bring us together as respectful and compassionate members of a diverse community. And now, to open our event, Ani Ladron.
So was asked to give a blessing, and I'd like to share a prayer that we recite and meditate on before every chanting event, every practice, and many times before meetings. is called the Four Immeasurables, and it's called the Four Immeasurables because the object of the prayer are immeasurable beings, all the beings in the universe. And the prayer is, may all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May all beings not have suffering or the causes of suffering. May all beings have sympathetic joy, free from all suffering. May all beings live in the great equanimity, which is free from clinging to those who are close and aversion to those who are far. So my hope is that through this gathering tonight, we may nurture in ourselves these four immeasurable qualities of love, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity, and become vehicles to nourish them in others. Thank you.
Thank you, Ani. My name is Nora Zaki, advisor for Muslim student life at both Vassar and Bard colleges. And I see that Mr. Kenneth Stern is actually here tonight, and I actually know him from Bard as well, so that's really great. So I'd like to begin with a verse from the Quran and then just a very short reflection. So I'm going to recite in Arabic and then translate into English. And this is from the 30th chapter of the Quran, which is called the Romans, or Ar-Rum in Arabic. And it is the 22nd verse. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wa min ayatihi khalqus samawati wal ardi wa ikhtilafu alsanatikum wa alwanikum. Inna fi dhalika la ayatin lil alimin. And this means, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Among his, i.e. God's signs, is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the variations in your languages and your colors. And I just thought that this verse was so appropriate for the theme, which is engaging differences, a journey towards understanding. And I just want to briefly read a small excerpt from Malcolm X, also known as Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, his letter to Hajj, because I really think it relates to what you all have been doing. And I didn't know that it was founded in the 1970s, so honored to be here. Excerpt. There are Muslims here of all colors and from every part of this earth. During the past days here in Mecca, while understanding the rituals of the Hajj, I have eaten from the same plate, drank from the same glass, and slept on the same bed with kings, with fellow Muslims whose skin was the whitest of white, whose eyes was the bluest of blue, and whose hair was the blondest of blonde. I could look into their blue eyes and see that they regarded me the same, because their faith in one God had removed white or black from their mind, which automatically changed their attitude and their behavior towards people of other colors. And I'm inspired by the Mexican writer Octavio Paz, who wrote, "What sets the world in motion is the interplay of differences, their attractions and repulsions. Life is plurality, death is uniformity." Thank you all so much. I hope you enjoy the program.
Say thank you, no. Thank you, Nora. My name is Joanne Salacito, and I am a member of the Baha'i Faith. Baha'is believe in progressive revelation, which means God sends a messenger to mankind approximately one every 1,000 years. In 6,000 years, he has sent 9 major messengers or prophets to mankind. Some of them are Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and in this age, his new messengers are the Bab and Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah means the glory of God. Baha'is are followers of Baha'u'llah. Each one brings a specific message or a book and establishes a civilization. The message for this day is the oneness of humanity and the unity of mankind. In 1890, the British historian Edward Granville Brown met with Baha'u'llah while Baha'u'llah was living in exile in the prison city of Akka. Brown interviewed Baha'u'llah 4 times. He described his first encounter as follows: "The face of him on whom I gazed I can never forget, though I cannot describe it." In his interviews with Brown, Baha'u'llah stated that all nations should become one in faith and all men as brothers, that the bonds of affection and unity between the sons of men should be strengthened, that diversity of religion should cease and the differences of race be annulled. What harm is there in this? Yet so it shall be, these fruitless strifes, these ruinous wars shall pass away, and the most great peace shall come. Let not a man glory in this, that he loves his country. Let him rather glory in this, that he loves his kind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
ॐ समिद्युवसे बृसन्नग्ने विश्वा निर्या इलस्पदे समिध्यसे सनो वसून्या भरा संगच्छध्वं संबदध्वं संभो मनांसि जानताम् देवा भागं यथा पूर्वे संजानाना उपासते समानो मंत्रः समितिः समानी समानं मनः सह चित्तमेषाम् समानं मन्त्रमभिमन्त्रयेव समानेन वो हविषा जुहोमि समानी ब आकूतिः समाना हृदयानि वः समानमस्तु वो मनो यथा वस्सु सहासति ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः. Hinduism is a way of life. So very ancient religion, not exactly religion. This is Hinduism is way of life. So before any religion, this is very ancient way of life. So Hindus, they follows Vedas, Vedic mantras. So Veda says, Sam Gachadvam. Everybody have to walk together, think together, worship together, because God is one and different way to reach. So all roads, all ways are good. So because everybody is right their own path. So everybody have full freedom to reach to God and live together, think together, work together, stay together. That is the message from Vedas and Vedic scriptures, and says, so God will protect to everybody. So all nature, creation, that God protect, that is the main prayer from Vedas. Hari Om.
Thank you, Pundit, for that message. My name is Rennie Altman. I am the rabbi of Vassar Temple, a Reformed Jewish synagogue in Poughkeepsie. Our journey towards understanding begins with the challenge of engaging differences. How do we relate to, how do we connect to those with whom we disagree? Judaism has a heritage of communal divisions, but also a history of respect and relationship despite those differences. As post-biblical Judaism developed, the rabbis debated about the practices that would build upon the laws laid out in the Bible. Rather than simply list their conclusions, rabbinic texts included the debates from all sides. Even as a conclusion was reached, they recorded the minority voices. Those voices still had a place within the Jewish community. Rabbis Hillel and Shammai, two of the greatest sages of the first century, each the head of a school, disagreed about practically everything, and rare was the time that a ruling was set according to the teachings of Shammai. Still, they had respect for one another, as is recorded in a Talmudic legend that told that for 3 years there was a dispute between the two schools, each one asserting that the law is in agreement with our views. Finally, a divine voice emerged and proclaimed that both are the words of the living God, but still the law is in agreement with the teachings of Hillel. But if both are the words of the living God, what was it that entitled the school of Hillel to have the law fixed in agreement with their rulings? Because they were kindly and modest. They studied their own rulings and the rulings of the school of Shammai, and were even so humble as to mention the actions of the school of Shammai before theirs. Even though they disagreed with each other's rulings, still they married within each other's communities and ate in each other's homes. They showed love and friendship towards one another, thus putting into the practice the text from the prophet Zechariah, "You must love truth and peace." Sadly, too many, even within the Jewish world today, do not follow these ancient teachings. The great Hasidic master of the 18th century, Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, offers this perspective. The essence of shalom, of peace, is to unite two opposites. Therefore, do not be alarmed when you meet someone whose opinions are dramatically opposed to yours, causing you to believe that it is absolutely impossible to live with him in peace. Similarly, when you see two people of extremely contrasting natures, do not say it is impossible to make peace between them. On the contrary, the very essence of peace is to strive for harmony between opposites, just as God made peace in the heavens between the contrasting elements of fire and water. So how do we begin on this path towards peace and wholeness despite our differences? One of the most taken from the book of Deuteronomy can guide us. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, listen, Israel. Our God is one. Shema. We begin by learning to listen, to really hear the voices, the stories, and the pain of others. Shema. May listening lead to a new understanding and opportunities for dialogue. Amen. To help us as we begin this journey, our year's exploration of engaging differences, I'm pleased to welcome our keynote speaker, Kenneth Stern. Ken is the director of the Bard Center for the Study of Hate, an attorney and award-winning author. For 25 years, he was the American Jewish Committee's expert on anti-Semitism, and he was also the lead drafter of the working definition of anti-Semitism. His publications include Loud Hawk, the United States versus the American Indian Movement, about his defense of the American Indian Movement co-founder Dennis Banks in one of the last post-Wounded Knee cases, and A Force Upon the Plain, the American Militia Movement and the Politics of Hate, about the Oklahoma City bombing. But it is from the experiences that led to the writing of his most recent book, The Conflict Over the Conflict, the Israel-Palestine Campus Debate, that Ken will draw upon tonight as he reflects upon the ways in which people and groups set themselves apart from one another, and how we can try to build those bridges that lead toward better understanding and perhaps even cooperation. Following his talk, we will have a short question and answer period. As we are learning from doing these kinds of things on Zoom, we find it best if people will submit their questions in the chat, and we would ask you to do that not to everyone, but to Susan Hecht, who is serving under the name host DCIC. Susan will collect the questions and then share them with me for our dialogue with Ken following his presentation. And if you're not already set on speaker view as opposed to gallery view, I recommend that you do that to have a better visual. And now we turn the unmute over to our speaker, Kenneth Stern.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Altman, Rennie, for that wonderful introduction. It's my honor to be with you all today. I'm a great fan of the work you all do, and I'm particularly delighted that my colleague from Bard, Nora Zaki, is part of this group too, and gave such an inspiring message. So as Rabbi Altman said, I have a recent book about the campus debates over Israel and Palestine. And I want to share with you what's, I think, a very illuminating story with which I start the book and end the book. And it's really not a campus situation. It involves Spokane, Washington. You may recall, some of you that are old enough, that back at the time of the 80s and 90s, there was a group called the Aryan Nations that was very active in the Idaho Panhandle that was right next to Spokane, and was a source of what we would call today domestic terrorism. There was a group from this neo-Nazi, Holocaust-denying, Hitler-worshipping compound called the Order that went and did a number of things, including robberies, and also murdered a Jewish talk show host, a radio talk show host, Alan Berg. A gentleman by the name of Buford Furrow in 1999 from the Aryan Nations went to the Jewish Community Center in Los Angeles and shot it up, wounding 3 children and then killing a Filipino postal worker. I was friends with a rabbi at the congregation there, the major congregation. He would tell me, although it wasn't reported in the press, that the few places where you can get Hanukkah wrap occasionally, they would think Aryan Nations members were responsible for putting razor blades inside the Hanukkah wrap. There was a parish priest that spoke out against the harassment of the local Jewish community. His house was firebombed with him in it. Thankfully, he wasn't hurt. So in 2001, the Southern Poverty Law Center, along with a local attorney named Norm Gissel, filed a lawsuit that shut down the Aryan Nations. But part of the reason why this was successful was that during that whole period of time, the Jewish community and the local peace and justice groups, in particular one of them, were working in coalition against the white supremacist danger. And even after the compound was closed down, the danger from white supremacy was still very evident. I was supremacist posters on the lampposts in downtown. There was a Martin Luther King Day parade a few years ago where they discovered a backpack with a radio-controlled bomb that was filled with it was a pipe bomb basically filled with fishing weight soaked in an anticoagulant from rat poison. Children were on that march. Thank God the bomb didn't go off. So the dangers there were really, known and obvious. But the Jewish community and the Peace and Justice Group between 2010 and 2018 didn't work with each other, wouldn't be in the same coalitions, wouldn't even be in the same room with each other. Why? Because the Peace and Justice Group had a static page on its website that was supporting the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel. The Jewish community was calling them anti-Semites, and nothing was happening. If you think about it, step back, this is nuts. Neither community there is going to solve the Israel-Palestine conflict, but they did have an interest in trying to work together to stop the dangers of white supremacy, and that people might be across the street planning nefarious things. So as I said, I had connections in Spokane. I also was part of the founding of the first Institute for Hate Studies at Gonzaga University, a Jesuit institution. And around 2017 or so, I got a call from one of the other co-founders, who's the former dean, now retired, of the law school, who's very active in the peace and justice group, and said, I don't understand this. I'm part of this group. I've never heard any anti-Semitism. This is nuts. Can you help figure out a way forward? And I wanted to do that. I like those people, and I thought there had to be a way forward. So this is what we did. Of a lot of conversations, we found 40 people specifically to invite into a room to spend a day. The day was not going to be one that was going to be wasted. It wasn't just a talk fest. It had to be people that were involved and were committed to doing something in the aftermath from what they learned that day. They had to commit to reading 80 pages of text that I gave them, in advance. And the group was not only the Jewish community and the peace and justice group. The head of the NAACP was there. The mayor was there for a bit. The police chief. It was people that really understood the danger to the community and wanted to move forward. I made some ground rules. That there were not going to be any more ad hominem attacks. That was not going to happen in that day in that room. That people had to be willing to listen to each other and listen deeply. That people had to be honest about what they thought, because otherwise the day would be wasted. And that all this was off the record. So it started out, the group wanted to begin with understanding anti-Semitism. So the readings and the discussions that I was leading in the first half of the day were about the history of the Jews, the history of anti-Semitism. We did a deep dive into one aspect of anti-Semitism to illuminate what it is. And for that, I chose Holocaust denial because it's a very good window into seeing the core of anti-Semitism as conspiracy theory about Jews and explaining what goes wrong in the world. I mean, you may find a more recent example with the representative from Georgia who talked about Jews and space lasers, but it's the same type of idea. And what I wanted them to understand about Holocaust denial as an example of anti-Semitism and how it works, that Holocaust denial wasn't about the Holocaust at all, really. That was just a pretext for it. It was really about Jews and the idea that Jews conspire to harm non-Jews. Like the claim that Jews poison wells really wasn't a debate about water quality. It was about what Jews are seen to do and to explain things that go wrong in the world. And I got them to read some things to see how reasonable anti-Semitism can appear just because it's conspiracy theories, and conspiracy theories can be reasonable. I give lots of examples. For example, the Holocaust deniers say the Anne Frank diary is a fraud. Why do they say that? Because there's a copy of the manuscript that has ballpoint pen written on the manuscript. Ballpoint pen was not prevalent until after World War II. And both of those facts are true. So they allege from that the Anne Frank diary is a fraud. Well, the reality is that these were emendations made by Otto Frank after the war was published, shortly after the war, before the emendations in that copy of the manuscript. But it's very easy to spin conspiracy theories by taking one thing out of context, and that's frequently how anti-Semitism works. We also had a large discussion about how do we gauge anti-Semitism, going through attitudes and hate crimes and political movements and so forth. And I really sensed a pent-up desire by people to say, why can't we discuss Israel? Why can't we discuss Palestine? Why can't we discuss Zionism? But I insisted that they needed this groundwork to think about these issues. Then in the early afternoon, we went through the idea of, from hate studies, basically how people look at us versus them. I went through some of the social psychology. You could take any group, flip a coin, divide it into group A and group B, and once each group forms an identity, each group tends to think of itself, its group is smarter, more attractive, and so forth. It's just how humans navigate the world in us and them. I gave them some readings and made some comments about why certainty is very much a part of how we look at things when we see in us, and then we want to feel certain about things. We want to make things black and white instead of gray. It's easier to put things in that binary format. And I wasn't going to have them read Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind, It's a book I commend to all of you and the work that you do, but it had a lot of lessons in it. It basically says when you see the world in moralistic terms, that morality both binds people together and blinds people to other things. I mentioned a few other things I took from the book. When a group of people make something sacred, he said, the members of the cult lose the ability to think clearly about it. He said there were two different kinds of cognition, intuiting and reasoning. He said, if you ask people to believe something that violates their intuitions, they will devote their efforts to finding an escape hatch. He argued that partisanship is addictive, that the love of loyal teammates is matched by a corresponding hatred of traitors, who are usually considered to be far worse than enemies. And sacredness of symbols help bind people into a moral community. So with those materials and that discussion in the early afternoon, we took a deep dive really into how we think, how we feel when our identity is tethered to an issue of perceived social justice and injustice. And what developed then is that we, at that point, and it was like mid-afternoon, we finally got into what people really wanted to talk about, the understanding the Israel-Palestine debate. But they had before them the understanding of what anti-Semitism was, who Jews were, and the ability to step back and think about how they were thinking about these issues, to be aware of why people got so emotional. And so, with their backup and seeing things in stark terms. I gave them, there's a gentleman named Paul Sham from the University of Maryland who had a very useful 2-page, here's the Jewish pro-Zionist, pro-Israel narrative, and here's the Palestinian narrative. And they were able to see those two things and contrast and compare them and understand each of them is internally logical, but where they sort of cross purposes. I gave them a reading about what's called the hostile media phenomenon, an article about a research project actually about how pro-Palestinian and pro-Israel folks look at New York Times coverage of the 1982 Lebanon war, and each side looked at the same articles and thought the Times was biased against them. And their major fear was that people that didn't have an opinion would be swayed to the opposite side's camp. I gave them an article by a Harvard professor named Derek Penzlar, who's a Jewish historian. That's a very good thought experiment. He said, well, what if instead of Jews coming back to their historic homeland in the land of Israel and Palestine, what if it was another group that had connections to the land? There was a Christian group called the Templars. And what would the reaction have been? Would it have been the same? Would it have been worse? Would it have been like reacting to South Africa and Rhodesia or something else? So it was a good way to really widen out the conversation, to think about it in more degrees. And at the end of it, what really struck me is I had one of the people that was the most pro-boycott, divestment, and sanctions participants from the Peace and Justice group come over to me and said, I never really thought before why Jews react so negatively to the idea of boycotts. But now I understand the history of Jews being boycotted, this makes sense. I understand something I didn't understand before. And there was one of the people in the room that was the most pro-Israel participants. And he came up to me afterwards and said, I'm thinking about what you said about when you debated a Palestinian academic about boycott, divestments, and sanctions for it. And I reflected that he had a point that had to be engaged, that people like me back at the time of the Second Intifada were saying you have to find a nonviolent way forward. And whatever you think about BDS, it's nonviolent. So they were looking at and thinking in ways they hadn't done before. The groups are still working. They're talking to each other. They found a vocabulary. They were working not only to continue discussing these issues, but working together against the main threat that they have in the community. Did something else too. The rabbi was telling me that the congregation is mostly very strongly pro-Israel, but there was somebody who was in a Jewish pro-Palestinian person who felt that he wasn't welcome. and they made sure he was welcome, even though they had those differences. So it taught them how to deal with these internal differences too. So the bottom line of this is that it is possible to have these difficult discussions. I think the things that are essential for it is, first, a willingness for people to want to figure out how to move forward, an openness to listening to people that have a different point of view, a willingness again to put the work in. All these folks took a day from their schedule and read, 80 pages of text I gave them and had to engage with it. And they had to be open to being aware of how people react emotionally to these hot button issues, whether it's Israel-Palestine or abortion or, blue versus red or whatever. And I've used that model on some college campuses and other places, and I'm encouraged by it. So I'm happy to share that story with you. I'm happy to take any of your questions, and on behalf of the Bard Center for the Study of Hate, if there are things that you think that we could be helpful in your work, it's an open invitation to reach out to me.
Thank you, Ken. So we do encourage people to send questions to host DCIC. Just on a small thing, somebody asked if you could repeat the name, and I think the author you were referring to was Jonathan Haidt, and if there was a particular book of his that you were recommending of his wonderful writing.
Yeah, it's Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T. And it should be Haidt given what he writes about, but it's Haidt. And it's called The Righteous Mind.
The Righteous Mind, yeah. So I'm wondering, you spoke about a particular context and particular issues, and just, mentioned there where it could branch out, the policy, what you're seeing. So, so much of what motivated this program tonight and the themes that DCIC wants to really focus on this year have been the broader polarization in our country, as you referred to, red, blue, and divisions within our community, and just, the inability to even understand the other perspective. I'm just curious if there are specific things you would suggest relating sort of to the political polarization. I don't know if you're aware of any groups that are coming together, how might one approach this?
Well, there are a number of things. I think on an individual level, there are things, to be done. I mean, I, a few years ago, realized that, I was missing a lot by not watching Fox News and now Newsmax. And people, including my wife, who Rennie knows pretty well, said, "What are you doing watching that? How can you watch that?" And I said, "How could I not? Because, there are millions of people who see the world that way. How could I not look at that, and not to dispel it, but to try to understand the sort of ground rules and ways that they're thinking?" And I've done a lot of reading. There's another book called Strangers in Their Own Land, which I thought was a very good eye-opening thing about people in the area where it was getting polluted in the South, and they still were very much on the Tea Party, even though the Tea Party was for deregulation, and deregulation was killing them. So there are a lot of things there, to read individually and to wrap your head around it. I think collectively, if there are opportunities, again, to bring people together for off-the-record discussions about who may want to try to find ways beyond beating up each other and getting out of our bubbles, that might be a good thing, because the pressure to go into your own bubble and beat up the other side is intense. I mean, we see it not only in social media, but I was talking about cable news. I mean, the formula that each of these have for winning, money is instead of taking the complexity of issues and saying these are issues that we all have responsibilities for deciding, the formula that gets them ads is to say, it's a simple problem, it's their fault. And if we can bring people together to try to unpack that and understand that's what's happening, how do we get beyond those bridges? I think that's a good thing, and to maybe bring some leadership together to figure out how to do that.
So I would just echo the book you referenced, Stranger in Their Own Land, was written by the sociologist Arlie Hochschild. I read it a few years ago, and it really was eye-opening, and I really carry a greater understanding of where those people she met with who were so diametrically opposed to her own views, just get some insight into where they were coming from. So someone asked, and get your opinion on this, do you feel it's easier to talk about our differences in faith than to talk within our own congregations about the differences between us as individuals? Well, surely what we're seeing in congregations around the country are seeing those that are not all unified in one direction or another, not even, addressing our differences on political views.
Well, are you asking internally in congregations of how?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's I think no community is monolithic. I think there are divisions. I mean, as you were, I think referencing, not specifically, Rennie, but the divisions in the Jewish community can be intense. I mean, we saw it over the Obama and the Iran deal. I'm in the midst of a bit of crossfire from all sides on things about the anti-Semitism definition, which, as you mentioned, that I wrote, but I think it's being abused to silence some speech, and that's a problem. I think, the inside communities can be just as difficult. And again, if people want to find a way forward, again, one of the outcomes that I didn't expect in Spokane, but was really very nice, was that there was a realization of, we may have these stark differences, but who should be inside the tent? And it should be a large tent. And how do we navigate when we have fundamental disagreements, but still allow people to be part of our community? And to the extent that you can have larger conversations inside those institutions that invite that as the goal, and figure out a vocabulary to get there, to be disagreeable, to disagree agreeably, basically, and to understand the differences, that I think would help a lot.
Yeah, I guess that would be a whole nother talk about how we got,
Yeah.
when were we able to disagree agreeably, and how it got to be where we are today. But maybe to that end, people have asked if you could talk a little bit more, I'm sure this will be a pleasure to, about the Bard Center for the Study of Hate, and what you do there. I know we are recipients of the opportunities to attend a variety of lectures, but also asking what kinds of activities, if there are, happening on the Bard campus to attempt to bridge differences, or if you're aware of activities in other colleges and universities.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I mean, the Bard Center for the Study of Hate was set up a couple of years ago, and the idea is to really create an opportunity for scholarship and student activity from different perspectives, and actually different academic disciplines, to look at the issue of hatred. Because the premise of this is that we know too little about how hatred works. We know tons of examples of the destructive effect of hatred, but we don't approach it in the same way we look at other human problems. Like I've said many times before, medicine, for example, we take from different disciplines because human beings get sick. So we take from biology and physics and chemistry and so forth. And we do that with architecture because people need housing. So we take from physics and art and math and so forth. But all these different parts of looking at hatred, whether it's psychology that looks at the individual, or social psychology that looks at the group, or history or religion or so forth, they're all sort of separately siloed. And we want to bring it together to try to create some answers. So we're doing a lot of things. I mean, one is we have a faculty reading group that's from different disciplines that want to increase teaching about hate. We're funding new courses on hatred that are hate-centric. I asked the faculty to look at their classes that intersect the definition of hate studies, demonizing and dehumanizing others. And I think we're in the first college in the country to have a hate studies initiative. I think there are about 40 or 50 classes going from the arts to the hard sciences, brain science, and so forth. So we're doing all those things. We're doing supporting senior project research, student internships with NGOs. And as you mentioned, the public programs. On campus, I love bringing people in to meet with the students and the faculty. But when COVID happened, it really changed the dynamic. So the downside is I missed the personal connection with the students and to bring people in. On the other side, there are people I was salivating. How do you get somebody like Robert Sapolsky, who writes about the brain, from Stanford to come to the Hudson Valley? Well, to get him sitting on his balcony for an hour was not a big deal. And I think we've had 58,000 people look at that webinar. So we're trying to do internal work, external work, and I invite everybody here, to email me. It's kstern@bard.edu if you want to be on the list of webinar programs. I'm happy to include anybody from this group.
That's very generous of you. Somebody put in the chat, and well, you must have heard this term of a speaker recently talk about, in quotes, a normalization of hate, and that we are living in a culture of meanness. So asking if you can comment on that, is that a sense of what's happening in our society and how we can deal with it?
Hate has always been around. I mean, one of the things about hate studies is that it looks back, throughout history, and the fact that bringing together from these different disciplines, it's always been a manifestation of, we always see an us and a them, whether we're rooting for sports or, any which way. It's how we navigate as human beings, and there are reasons for that. The question is when it becomes problematic and potentially, genocidal and violent. And incredibly destructive. And that's always been a part of human history. So it's nothing new. I think in each era, there are things that may be new in terms of how it's communicated and how it's felt, and culturally, how it's used. And, we live in an era where social media is available, where we have, one of the things that I think really amped up some of the pressures in the last few years in the United States was the rhetoric coming out of the White House. And there are movements in Europe that are also xenophobic and so forth. Those are all things that are a concern, but it's nothing new. So what we're trying to do at Bard is to realize this is something that's been a constant human problem. It's not just that the temperature is up today. And if we're going to be more successful, I don't think you ever eradicate hatred, but if we're going to be more successful in strategies of how to manage it, we have to think smarter and better and bring more people into the fold who have ideas about how to do that. And to the extent we can do that, I think we'll all be better off.
Amen. As we're almost at the end of our Q&A assigned time, just one final question. As so many of the events of the last year have brought many within our country and within this community to also be looking at questions of racial justice and the history of racism in this country, and wondering if that has interfaced with your work at all. And another thing, people have been looking at sort of, and if you've talked about it all related to hate with implicit bias, and how do we move people who may not even be aware of, those sublimated kind of feelings?
It's a great question, and obviously it's something that's a concern to the center and to me personally. We actually did a webinar right after George Floyd with actually it was one of the veterans of the Freedom Riders and a scholar who writes about these things. But it's obviously a larger issue of how do we deal with race in society. Where is it discrimination? Where is it hatred? Where is it used politically? One of the things that I take as a truism is that hate works in politics and always has. Otherwise, politicians wouldn't use it. It's in our institutions. But I also am, somewhat concerned about some of the pushback to that type of hate we're seeing, where there's also a tendency of people, again, to sort of go into the, to the binary things and to beat up, people who may have said one thing out of context. Or may not be, promoting hatred, but sort of hunting for expressions to vilify. And I don't think that's useful. There's a part of that becomes trying to censor and engage people that have a different point of view. I think it's really a question of collective learning and creating the environment for that, as opposed to feeling, self-righteous and, calling out things that you might disagree with. I think there are smarter ways of doing that.
Thank you. There are more questions coming in. We are in a time commitment, but we thank you, and hopefully people will engage with your work in the center, and read your books too. And these questions that are coming up may hopefully be sort of topics where we can go in the future in the DCIC. I think the challenge for all of us is finding those partners on the other side from wherever we may be, to engage in that kind of dialogue. I think between what you've shared with us and materials out there, there are tools. We have to have willing participants. I guess it's always beginning small, right? Beginning with our own communities and building out, and that's how we make changes. So thank you so much for sharing with us and being here, and even more, thank you for the good work that you are doing. And I guess that is one of the blessings of the situation now, is it can even reach out further from the Center of Hate. So we wish you continued success and strength in what you do.
Thank you, and thank you all.
Okay, so we move on. Oh, and I do want to mention with the recording, and I guess, John, you'll talk to people if there's anybody who would like to go back to that. Okay, so we pass the baton on here, I guess, to Reverend John Simon.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here with you all. I want to end this moment not so much with a blessing, but a prayer. If we are careful, intentional, and prayerful about being actively concerned for all our neighbors, both far and near, of all faiths, creeds, colors, across the spectrum, we may actually grow towards a new place, a different place, a new reimagined place. That place is described by Mckenna Whitaker in her little book, Seasons of Your Heart. That place, Whitaker said, is a place where we don't throw someone away because of our lack of hope and their potential. We don't throw someone away because of our lack of hope and their possibility to be. Whitaker's prayer is my prayer for all of us today, this evening. Hope much, may we hope much in the lives of those around us, far and near, who believe and practice as we do, and those who don't. Hope much for others' lives, and let it never be said, as Whitaker says, may it never be said of us faithful and faith-filled folks that someone died because we failed to believe in them. May we not just pray for others, but reimagine what radical love looks like for all of our brothers and sisters under the sun. For we must help give birth to buried possibilities by doing some things different, because we've all heard, if we keep doing what we've done, we'll keep getting what we've got. So may we believe in the greater possibilities of this human drama called life, because there's no more land. We're in this together. So be it. Thank you.
One voice, one spirit, one voice, sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of voices too. The sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of all of us, singing with love and the will to trust. Leave the rest behind, it all turns to dust. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of one voice, one people, one voice, a song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice.
This concludes our program for this evening, and we welcome you all to stay engaged with DCIC in the coming year. Peace, love, commitment, and purpose to all of you. Bless you. Thank you. And let's engage our differences and make this next year a year of hope and healing for everyone. We love you. Stay safe and onward. Peace.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Pastor Hector. Thank you very much. It was very nice to hear from all of you. Thank you.
We hope that you'll become part of this group soon. Hector, Pastor Hector, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless everyone. Thank you so much.
I'm just leaving the meeting open until people sign out. I'm going to be abrupt.
It's just so nice to hear so many wonderful voices and different voices.
We didn't get to every question, but I'm going to keep the document with all the questions.
Do we know who sent the
We have them
Okay.
captured.
I don't know if we have. Do you have who sent them, Susan?
some of them.
don't
I will
think
go
I-
back, I will go back into the chat and get those
Okay.
minutes before I close the meeting and let the recording download. I will do that.
Okay.
You can save the chat and
That, right. Yeah, it's all set.
All righty. Well, thank you all.
Did
for
you want
coming.
anything else, Lorraine?
I just wanted to talk to you personally. Nobody
Oh.
else. I have a question to ask you that has nothing to do with this.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we should just email on it. 'cause-
You want to, I know you're hard to get to, so I'll send you an email. We can.
Yeah. I did check it.
Is that-
All right, because I think people are still not
Yeah,
sure
I
what's
know.
going on.
All
Good
right.
night,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you
Thank
all,
you.
partners in work.
Thank you especially to all those behind the scenes. Have a
Yeah,
good
thank
night.
you, Susan. We didn't get to thank you and Lorraine
a
and
little-
Muriel. No one recognized who really put the
It's
program
okay.
together.
It worked. That's the better part. As long as it.
Did the video on your end okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
There was a lot to do.
You did a
There
beautiful
is, there
job.
is. It's a
All
lot
right.
to manage. No, it
There
was
was a
great.
lot to do. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
I have the chat. I'm going to let the recording download, and we can post it on the DCIC website or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. Okay, thank you all. Okay. I'm going to leave, Susan. You're in good hands by
Okay,
yourself.
yeah, I'm going to close the meeting, and then I'm going to download the recording, which takes a while.
Okay, thanks. I'll see you
Okay.
soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
I'll be Zooming.